I was made way back in 1842 by a humble man, a real God-fearing Jew, who did his work with honesty, feeling and with pride. He was known in Kiev as Yankele the scribe. With loving care, his hand so sure and still, he formed me with some parchment, ink and quill. Each day he'd slowly add to me just a few more lines, with words to last till the end of time. And on the day that I was finally complete, the whole town came and filled the narrow street. And they sang and danced and held me high and carried me away to the little wooden shul where I would stay. And as the rabbi held me close against his chest, he spoke out loud and clear to all the rest. He said, no matter if you're very young or even if you're old, live by the words you'll find inside this scroll. 3 days a week they read from me out loud. It filled my soul with joy, it made me proud. They followed each and every verse with fire in their eyes, the words that told them how to live their lives. I watched the generations come and go. I saw the old men die, the children grow. But never in a century did I miss my turn once, for the fathers, they had left me with their sons. But the hatred from the west came to Kiev, and they rounded up the Jews who had not fled. But Moishele the shamus, he was brave and he was bold. He hid me in his cellar, dark and cold. And for years and years I waited all alone for the people of my town to take me home. And they'd sing and dance and hold me high when they carried me away to my little wooden shul where I would stay. But it was someone else who found my hiding place, and to America he sent me in a crate. And the men who took me off the boat, they said I was a prize, but they were Jews I did not recognize. And in a case of glass they put me on display, where visitors would look at me and say, how very nice, how beautiful, a stunning work of art. But they knew not what was inside my heart. And across the room I saw upon the shelf some old friends of mine who lived back in Kiev. A silver pair of candlesticks, a menorah made of brass. We'd all become mere echoes of the past. So if you hear my voice, why don't you come along and take me to the place where I belong. And maybe even sing and dance when you carry me away to some little wooden shul where I could stay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Chaffetz, and I'm here to welcome you. I've been asked to fill in today for Shep Englander. Shep is the CEO of the Federation, and unfortunately, he's in Washington on National Federation business. He sends his best regards, and he wishes he was here, but I'm glad he gave me the opportunity. Holocaust memory and Holocaust education is extremely important to me, and it's extremely important to my wife. My wife's family, her father and her mother, were Holocaust survivors. And we have done everything that we can do to bring the Holocaust to life for people, to be educated about the Holocaust, to try to do what we can to make sure that it never happens again. And in that respect, we've become underwriters for the Federation's Holocaust Memorial and Education Center, which is being built right outside the doors of this building. Hopefully, soon when you come here, you'll be able to visit it and be inspired by it. Today, we remember the survivors. Today, we honor those survivors that are still with us. Every year we keep saying the number of survivors is getting smaller and smaller, and it is. And that means our job to make sure that the history of the Holocaust and the memory of the victims is never forgotten. It's amazing to me to think that Kristallnacht, which we're observing today, we're commemorating today, was 86 years ago. 86 years ago. But here we are in 2024, November 2024, and there was a pogrom in Europe this past week. I don't know whether you've been following the news, but in Amsterdam this week, there was a pogrom, and hundreds of Jews and Israelis who came to Amsterdam to watch a soccer match were attacked in the streets of Amsterdam, beaten. Some went to the hospital, and in fact, the Israeli government sent 8 planes, 8 El Al passenger planes to Amsterdam to bring 2,000 Israelis who had been at that soccer match home. We've got work to do, folks. We have work to do. Today we're also remembering the Memorial Torah Trust, Torah Scrolls Trust, which is 60 years old. This organization has been absolutely amazing. They have gathered over 1,500 Torahs that were at risk from Eastern Europe, from Czechoslovakia mostly, and rescued them and distributed them around the world. In fact, almost 100 of them are in Florida. We're going to hear in a few minutes from people from the trust, and they're going to tell us what they do. But it's an amazing thing, and we have Torahs here today which are going to be displayed. You're going to see them all. to help us keep the memory alive. As we remember them, as we remember the victims, as we remember the survivors, as we remember the liberators, as we remember all the people who helped us, we must be resilient. We are resilient, and we will fight back always, and we will ultimately prevail. So I'm going to turn the program over now to the co-chairs, Haley Englander and Agnes Schipper, and they will moderate the rest of the program. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, and on behalf of the Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee, thank you for joining us. My name is Haley Englander, and along with Agnes Schipper, my co-chair, we are honored that you are here for this year's Kristallnacht commemoration and the 60th anniversary of the Memorial Scrolls Trust. We welcome you to this momentous occasion where we are blessed to receive 24 Torah scrolls that were among the 1,564 scrolls rescued from after the Holocaust in Czechoslovakia. Thanks to the Memorial Scrolls Trust in the UK, these scrolls were refurbished and disseminated around the world. We especially thank the fortunate Jewish organizations in the state of Florida, including our own federation, who were granted stewardship of these precious centuries-old Torah scrolls by the Memorial Scrolls Trust for joining us today. We gather today on the 86th anniversary of the November pogrom, known as Kristallnacht, the first nationwide eruption of massive violence against the Jewish minority in Germany, Austria, and Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia. Jewish homes, places of business, schools, and hospitals were destroyed. Synagogues were set on fire and ransacked. Many Jews were murdered, and more than 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and taken to concentration camps. And as each town's people stood by and watched, the terrifying reality of Hitler's murderous campaign continued to escalate. According to historian and scholar Michael Berenbaum, Kristallnacht was the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end of the Holocaust. Our federation has a long-standing commitment to Holocaust education. Through events such as today's program, we honor the memory of those who perished during the Holocaust and those who survived and their families, to tell their stories so that we may always remember and keep their legacies alive. We support our schools and encourage them to educate the next generation about the lessons of the Holocaust to help create a world without prejudice and hate. We provide professional development opportunities and Holocaust curriculum and resources to our local teachers. Just over 1 year ago, we witnessed and continue to mourn the horrific events of October 7th, when Hamas terrorists brutally attacked our brothers and sisters in Israel. We grieve for those who lost their lives and raise awareness of those who were taken as hostages. And we stand in solidarity with all who have been victims of this tragedy. We bear witness to the aftermath of this extraordinarily heinous act, when globally the overt signs of anti-Semitism are once again rising.
And so we must do something. We must do something, including continuing on the path of reaching out and building awareness, and to educate our world towards the basic truth of human value and freedom. We must support our federation and other community organizations that embrace the mission of educating the world about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism. We know the insidious seeds of anti-Semitism were being planted for centuries in many societies around the world before Hitler rose to power in 1933 and unleashed what became the Holocaust, the Shoah. We owe a debt of gratitude to all those organizations and individuals who bore witness to the Shoah and who left us with such invaluable treasures as art, music, diaries, artifacts, documents, and historical accounts. The witnesses include the centuries-old Torah scrolls, which were rescued from the ashes of the temples in Bohemia and Moravia in Czechoslovakia after the Holocaust and are here today. And they live on, precious legacies safeguarded by Jewish organizations around the world. With gratitude, let us rejoice, for we have been given this extraordinary gift of being able not only to honor these remarkable Holocaust survivors who are with us today, but also to view these sacred scrolls, for they too bore witness and survived the atrocities of the Holocaust. And now let us invite Ellie and Sivan Levy, two fourth-generation Holocaust survivors who will be lighting 6 candles representing the 6 million Jews who perished during the Holocaust, as we ask all of our Holocaust survivors and their families and second-generation survivors, if you are able, to please rise as we share our gratitude to you for your courage and strength and for instilling on us the importance of resistance, resilience, and hope. Please be seated. We now begin our commemorative program. We are pleased to present 2 extraordinary individuals representing the Memorial Scrolls Trust. Our first speaker will be Lois Roman, a trustee of the Memorial Scrolls Trust, MST, who serves as the U.S. representative based on the East Coast. Lois began her involvement with MST several years ago, following a long career as a money manager on Wall Street. She has an MA in Holocaust and Genocide Studies from the Fish Center at Yeshiva University, an undergraduate degree from Brandeis University, and an MBA from Columbia Business School.
Our second speaker will be Jeffrey Orenstein. Jeffrey Orenstein, chairman of Memorial Scrolls Trust, was born in England and raised and educated in New Zealand, England, and South Africa. Jeffrey was appointed chairman of MST more than a decade ago and has made great strides in adding technology to the MST offices, enriching the Board of Trustees and volunteer communities, and raising awareness of the Trust's mission and activities. Jeffrey has cultivated donors around the world and continues to seek new allocations of scrolls. He lives with his wife Nora in London and is surrounded by a loving family of children and grandchildren. Please welcome Lois.
Good afternoon. I'm not as tall as they thought I was going to be. So thank you to Federation for sponsoring this amazing event and to its organizers, including Betty Zaret and the operating committee. Why are we here today? We sit in this beautiful space a few days before the anniversary of a dark event for the Jewish people that happened decades ago, a November pogrom which took place in Nazi Germany, Kristallnacht. Let's imagine for a second the sounds of anti-Semitic chants at large rallies, vandalized Jewish businesses and homes, violent physical attacks on Jewish people. Ironically, you did not invite me here to talk about the last year in major cities across the world. You did invite me here to talk about events that occurred about 80 years ago in Europe, but that have so much relevance to us today. To start, let's talk about Torah scrolls. Bereshit, in the beginning. I won't go on. The Torah scroll is the most revered item in Judaism. Whether we define as Reform or Conservative, Orthodox, or any other style of Jewish, if we live in Sarasota, Palm Beach, Paris, Poland, or Israel, we all read the same words from these scrolls. It's the glue that binds us all together. It is the ultimate storybook, filled with tales of people who lived thousands of years ago. We reread it each year to learn about them, but mostly to learn about ourselves. Let's take a look at one of those Torah stories. Last week, we read about Noah and the building of an ark. A flood was coming, and Noah needed to save things, his family, and he decided pairs of all the animals. We've been all too familiar with floods in recent months, sadly here in Florida, North Carolina, Spain, Southeast Asia. What would you save if you knew a catastrophe was coming? Beyond your family members, I'm assuming. Perhaps you'd throw in that suitcase a photo album, candlesticks, your grandmother's jewelry. Why? Most likely, you would save these tangible items, those seemingly irreplaceable items, to remind you and your descendants that you were here, that you lived a life in this place. It's an example of Lador Vidor, from generation to generation. The Jewish people have been passing on Jewish teachings, rituals, and beliefs for thousands of years, sometimes verbally and sometimes through objects. So too, in these precious Torah scrolls, assembled here, does the Jewish legacy live on and connect European Jewish lives, which were cut short in the early 20th century, with us today. I will spend the next few minutes talking about the ancestry and amazing story of survival of the Czech scroll collection. But let's start with some geography. Our story will focus on the lands around the current-day big cities of Prague and Brno in the Czech Republic. These areas were originally the ancient kingdoms of Bohemia and Moravia, sitting in Central Europe, surrounded to the west by Germany, to the south by Austria, and to the east by Poland. There were 1,000 years of Jewish history in these lands before World War II. The Jews were alternatively invited in and kicked out over the centuries, invited in to serve as bankers and to provide tax revenue for landowners, and kicked out when the new rulers displayed unfettered anti-Semitism. After the Jews were given the right of citizenship in the Czech area in the mid-19th century, Jewish life blossomed and Jews spread to more than 300 small towns and cities all over Bohemia and Moravia. Most of the Jews adopted Reform Judaism from Germany. They spoke German or Czech. They felt nationalistic pride in their country. They fought in World War I for the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They wore fashion styles of the times. They sent their children to secular schools and intermarried with the Czechs and the Germans living in the area. Anti-Semitism was somewhat muted, and Jews held prominent positions in business, education, and politics. Sound familiar? After World War I, the country of Czechoslovakia was created from the merger of these Czech lands with the country of Slovakia. In Germany, the Nazi Party was gaining momentum, and the Jewish community was watching with increasing fear, especially after Kristallnacht in 1938, when Jewish businesses were raided and destroyed by masses of German citizens, undeterred by the German police force. Many Jews were able to leave Bohemia and Moravia for seemingly safer places, like the US or British Palestine in the late 1930s. But about 118,000 Jews were still in the Czech lands. In 1939, the Nazis invaded Bohemia and Moravia on their way to Poland, thus starting World War II. I will pause here and not go on and on about World War II or Holocaust history. Instead, I will tell you the amazing story of Jewish resistance and heroism and how the scroll collection survived the Holocaust. I'll frame the story in 4 miracles. Miracle number 1, the collection. Under the Nazi occupation, the Jewish community of Prague was forced to send a letter to all of the 350 smaller Jewish congregations requesting their silver objects and rare ancient manuscripts. Not Torah scrolls, ancient books in the libraries. In an act of resistance and heroism, the Jews manipulated the Nazis into collecting all of the movable Judaica. More than 200,000 items were sent to Prague, cataloged at the Jewish Museum, and put away in storage. This coincided with the Jewish deportations to Terezin, a concentration camp outside Prague. From there, the Jews were sent to the death camps. The curators worked feverishly under horrible conditions to save as much as they could before they themselves were sent to the camps. Miracle number 2. Very few bombs fell on Prague during the war. This meant that the Judaica collected survived intact. Unfortunately, Czech Jewry was decimated, with less than 15% of the Jews surviving the Shoah. In an amazing development, one of the curators of the museum and a collector of the Judaica that survived the war was back at the helm of the museum archives. By 1948, communism came to the Czech lands. She convinced the government to allow her to move the Torah scrolls to the abandoned Mikli synagogue, where they stayed until the 1960s. Miracle number 3. Strapped for cash, the communists were looking for assets to sell. What better moneymaker than a collection of useless religious artifacts? A deal was made between a London art collector, his client, and the communist government. The scrolls were sold. In 1964, 2 trucks pulled up outside the Westminster Synagogue in Knightsbridge, London. The congregants unloaded the trucks and were eager to see what was inside the 1,564 bags they had carried off the trucks. When they began to open the bags, they were shocked. Inside were Torah scrolls, which were burnt, had bullet holes, had bloodstains on them. They even found notes inside that said, "Please remember us." Miracle number 4. This was a project far greater than one investor or one synagogue. The predecessor of MST began. The trust fixed as many scrolls as they could and sent them around the world on permanent loan to synagogues, schools, museums, and libraries, including those shuls in attendance today. Currently, there are 1,400 scrolls in circulation. Our collection dates from the 1200s to the early 20th century. All of the scrolls were collected in the little area of the Czech lands, and many have special Kabbalistic writing and ornaments not found elsewhere. The scrolls in our collection all have the shared legacy, but each has a unique backstory written for a specific Jewish community. Today is a commemoration of lost Jewish communities that were vibrant and active before the Holocaust. 60 years ago saw the beginning of the Memorial Scrolls Trust. It was created to do the same thing as all the synagogues represented here today, to carry on the traditions of Jewish life passed on for generations. Noah preserved his family and that which he held dear in his world. The story of the journey of the Czech scrolls is also the story of L'Dor V'Dor. In the 21st century, the eyewitnesses and survivors of the Holocaust are passing on. Who will tell the story of the Holocaust to future generations? The Holocaust was the largest tragedy of the Jewish people in our time. We have an obligation to retell the story. We have an opportunity to use these scrolls, which are also survivors and witnesses to the Shoah, to teach future generations. The MST Czech Torah collection underwent a similar experience as the Jews. They were collected in a concentrated area. They were numbered and cataloged. They were kept in bad conditions, and their health deteriorated. Unlike the Jews, most of the scrolls survived, and now it is their turn to play a role in retelling the story. We can and should use these Torah scrolls for this purpose. So, I challenge each and every one of you to embrace Holocaust education. Tell the story to your descendants and your friends so the legacy of those 6 million murdered Jews is never lost and the events of the Holocaust are never repeated. May we all remain safe in these challenging times, L'dor v'dor, from generation to generation. Thank you. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce the chairman of Memorial Scrolls Trust, visiting from London, Mr. Jeffrey Ornstein.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you can understand my foreign accent. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for attending this very special event. This is one of the most extraordinary buildings that I've actually visited. Many towns that I've visited in the last year, but I can truly say that this is the most incredible one, and thank you all for attending. I'd also like to echo Lois's words for the Federation, Betty and all the others that did so much work to enable this event to take part. 1964 is the year that the scrolls arrived in London, and this equates in the Jewish calendar to 5,724. For those who know a little about gematria, the study of numbers, 5 plus 7 plus 2 plus 4 equals 18, which is Chai in Hebrew, and means life. 2024, which is now, is the Gregorian 60th anniversary, and 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 4 equals 8, which is Chet in Hebrew, and alludes to moving on from the natural to the spiritual world. It is interesting how these two numbers are linked to the Czech Torah. Following their arrival in London in 1964, the task of finding them new homes began, resulting in the creation of the Memorial Scrolls Trust, or MST as we now prefer to call ourselves, becoming possibly the single largest provider of Torah anywhere in the world. Our scrolls have been allocated to and are used in communities from Alaska to New Zealand and Mumbai to Buenos Aires, with around 1,000 in the Americas. I have to say Americas because my wife is from South America, and if I say America, she gets annoyed with me. We've got to count North and South America. The MST is one of the only Jewish organizations in the world whose members include communities from the most Orthodox to the most progressive. We pride ourselves on working with and being accepted by all sections of the community. The Czech Republic had around 120,000 Jews before the Shoah. Now, there are only some 4,000. We have close ties with the Jewish Museum in Prague, where in fact 2 months ago, I attended the 30th anniversary of the museum being returned from the state to the Jewish community. We also work very well with the nascent Jewish communities in the Czech Republic. In 2017, we allocated a kosher scroll to the Olomouc community, which is Orthodox. And in 2021, we allocated another kosher one to Eitz Chaim, which is a new progressive community in Prague. Only last week, I personally carried a scroll for the Jewish community in Liberec, which has the only synagogue in the Czech Republic built since the end of the Shoah. In reality, all available scrolls were distributed many years ago. However, as they're allocated on loan, never sold, and to be returned to the MST if the scroll holders close or merge, we do receive some scrolls back each year and have been allocating around 10 scrolls annually for the last few years to new applicants. This year alone, we have allocated Torah to communities in the USA, Portugal, Singapore, Israel, and the Czech Republic, as well as to an Orthodox community in Santiago de Chile. Thanks to the wonders of modern technology, as well as the generosity of donors, we have constructed a museum-standard database and digitized some 40,000 letters and documents, enabling us to build better communications with our scroll holders and give them much more information. Having an MST Torah carries with it a responsibility. These are not just Sifrei Torah. These are Czech Sifrei Torah. They come with a legacy and a heritage. The survivors and silent witnesses of the Shoah. They must play an important part in the spiritual and religious life of the communities, and should also be used for inter- and intra-faith work. These Torah are messages from destroyed communities that depend on their new congregations to ensure that they are remembered, and their Jewish heritage is cherished. We ask that these scrolls are used in B'nai Mitzvah and other services where possible. If not kosher, they can still be used on Kol Nidrei, for Hakafot, Simchat Torah, and also for education. One of our projects is to link scroll holders by asking them to add a Czech Torah page to their website. Our target is to have over 1,000, and so far we've made 550 links. So if any of you belong to a community which does not yet have a page, please contact us for more information how to create a suitable one. We'll be delighted to help. We have a small but internationally recognized museum in London where we display 150 Torah and 500 wimples and binders, the largest collection of its type anywhere in the world. As well as receiving groups from local synagogues, universities, schools, visitors come from many countries, and we can always be delighted to give them personal tours. However, we do ask you to contact us well in advance to make sure a guide is available. 2 years ago, we published our first book, Light Beyond the Shadows. Now a new book available here, 1,564 Scrolls, A Legacy of Jewish Life in Bohemia, Moravia, is available and includes a history of the Jews in the Czech lands, as well as the story of how the scrolls were saved and how they're used now. We're in the process of constructing a new website that will start to go live in a couple of months. We already have an e-shop dedicated to books with a Czech Jewish interest. Many survivors or their families have written memoirs of Jewish life in Czech lands before the Shoah, and most of those, in fact, have not been published. We're now collecting these to make sure they're never lost, and hope in the future to publish a book with them. Our scrolls are written over several centuries in Ashkenazi, Czech, Polish, Kabbalistic, and even Sephardic Hebrew, with parchment heights ranging from 8-inch to 30-inch. You see the scrolls here, various sizes. We have had one carbon dated now to the 13th century, making it possibly one of the oldest in the world. We want this unique collection from one small area in Europe to be preserved and studied by Sofrim, academics, and paleographers. Many of the Torah were written by more than one scribe, so now we're working on a project to completely digitize as many scrolls as possible. Last Tuesday, I was honored to present a Czech Torah to the Chamber of Deputies of the Czech Parliament in Prague. Other than the Torah in the Knesset, which is not from us, this is the only Torah in a parliament anywhere in the world. It will serve as a powerful reminder of the danger of totalitarian regimes and as a beacon of education and remembrance for the deputies international guests, and visitors. It will also foster a deeper understanding and appreciation of the intertwined history of the Czech people and its Jewish community, promoting cultural empathy and support the ongoing commitment to human rights and historical truth. If only other countries would copy this example, I would be very happy. In Kohelet, we're told there's a season for everything under the sun, but not the contradictory emotions can overlap, e.g. joy and sadness. And we have to figure out how to cope with both simultaneously. How apt this is with reference to our scrolls. Sadness at the history, joy at the meaningful use and the enthusiasm of our Czech Torah scroll holders. Once again, we're experiencing a tragic time with pain and suffering, dividing communities that share a common root, the Torah, the Pentateuch in Christianity, the 5 books of Musa in Islam. We hope that in some small way, our scrolls and our scroll holders that use them can remind people of all faiths of what we have in common, rather than what divides us. Thank you very much.
And now, it is our privilege to introduce you to each of the Torah scroll holders in alphabetical order by their synagogue or organization's name as they begin the processional, serenaded by the magnificent renditions from our musicians, pianist David Fancher and violinist Dan Jordan. Some of the scrolls were too fragile to travel or their trustees were unavailable, so these are going to be represented by a poster of the scroll. The first scroll was originally from Boskovice, and it's being carried by trustees for the Bat Yam Temple of the Islands in Sanibel. The next scroll is from...
Please rise, everyone.
Carried by Chabad Lubavitch of Sarasota-Manatee, Sarasota. The next scroll is from Pavduvice and being carried by the trustee for Congregation Beth Am, Tampa. And now coming down the aisle is a scroll that originated in Kutna Porta and is being carried by a trustee for Shirai Zedek, Tampa. Walking down the aisle now is a scroll which originated in Strahochnie and is being carried by a trustee for Congregation Shalom Lechem from Kissimmee. Now, processing is a scroll from Ivonice, carried by a trustee for the Max and Mania Noodle Holocaust Learning Center, David Posnick Jewish Community Center from Davie. And following him is a scroll which originated in Prague, being carried by a trustee for the David Posniak Jewish School in Davie.
Now we have the scroll originally from Prague, entrusted to the Florida Holocaust Museum in St. Petersburg. Now we have a scroll from Lashtica in the care of the Jewish Community Center of West Pasco in Port Richey. Next, another scroll is from Soshitsa, carried by the Jewish Congregation of Venice in Venice. And now there's a scroll coming originally from Pisek Strachanitsa, the Jewish Federation of Sarasota-Manatee in Sarasota.
Our next scroll comes to us from Rocky Sani and is being brought by the Southwest Orlando Jewish Congregation from Orlando, Florida. Now down the aisle, we have a scroll originally from Slakov u Berna and is being brought to us by Temple Beth El in Ormond Beach, Florida. We welcome our next scroll from Cromerides and is being brought to us by Trustee Beth Israel from Longboat Key. Our next scroll originates from Bresnice and is being brought to us by Temple Beth Or in Coral Springs, Florida. Next scroll originates from Praha and is being brought to us by Trustee Temple Beth Or in Coral Springs. Walking now, we have a scroll that originates from Goku Jenikov and is currently under the care of Temple Beth Shalom of Polk County in Winter Haven, Florida. Our next scroll, we were unable to trace the origin of it, but it is being brought to us by Temple Beth Shalom of Sarasota, Florida. This next scroll comes to us from Klatovi and is being brought to us by Temple Emmanuel of Sarasota, Florida. Scroll walking now originates from Ostehov and is being brought to us by Temple Israel on the Highlands in Sebring. Our next scroll is originally from the town of Loni and is under the care of Temple Judea in Fort Myers.
This next scroll is originally from Bosco Vise. It has been cared for by Temple Shalom of Central Florida in Oxford. This scroll was used in the community of Budinad, Ori, and has been in the care of Temple Shalom of Naples. And finally, our last scroll is from Bosco Vise. It was too fragile to be here, but it is in the careful custody of Temple Shir Shalom in Gainesville.
In the presence of these awe-inspiring scrolls, we now turn to Rabbi Snyderman, the president of the Sarasota-Manatee Rabbinic Association, as he recites prayers for Israel, our survivors, and for the Torah scrolls. We will then be joined by Holocaust survivor Marcel Infeld as he sings El Malay Rachamim, after which we kindly ask all rabbis in attendance to lead us in the Mourner's Kaddish. If you are able, please rise.
On the occasion of the anniversary of the November pogrom, also known as Kristallnacht, on the occasion of the anniversary of the founding of the Memorial Scrolls Trust, one an act of destruction, the other an act of rescue. When this program is over, we will return our Torah scrolls to their appropriate places, to the arks in our synagogues. And I would like to share with you 2 paragraphs that are said in the traditional service when the Torah is read on weekdays as the Sefer Torah is returned to the Ark. I'll read the first little section in English, the second in English and Hebrew. May it be the will of our Father who is in heaven to have mercy on us and our remnant, and to ward off destruction and pestilence from us, and from all his people, the house of Israel, and let us all say Amen. Achenu kol bet Yisrael, hanetunim betzara uveshivya, haomdim bein bayam uvein bayabasha, hamakom yirachem alehem, v'yotzi'em mitzara rivcha, me'afala la'ora, u'mishibud legeula, hashabagalo u'bizman kariv v'nomar Amen. Very relevant as for our brethren, the whole house of Israel, who are handed over to distress and captivity on sea or on land. May God have mercy on them and grant them relief, bringing them from darkness to light, from servitude to liberty, speedily and very soon. And let us all say, Amen. Marcel.
El male rachamim, shochen b'meromim, amtze menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, b'ma'alot kedoshim u'tehorim, kezohar harakia mazhirim, et nishmot chayalei tzva hagana leYisrael v'chol ele shemasu et nafsham al kiddush Hashem v'shenehergu b'shoah ana ba'al harachamim tastirem b'tzel kenafecha לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותם וינוחו בשלום על משכבם ונאמר אמן.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמך רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי, וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעמי עמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. אלא מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן וערבה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו amen. And may the source of peace grant peace unto all those who mourn and comfort the bereaved among us. And let us all say amen.
Well, these are the closing remarks. First, I want to thank our beloved Holocaust survivors and the generations after survivors, the Memorial Scrolls Trust, those stewards of the precious Torah scroll, Rabbi Snyderman, David Chaffetz, Marcel Infield, our rabbis, our amazing musicians, Stephen Fancher and Dan Jordan, and Ellie and Sivan Levy for helping make this such a magnificent, memorable, and meaningful event. And finally, thank you to all the volunteers, and a big thank you to Betty Zaret, Holocaust Education. She worked tirelessly to make this program possible. Today, we commemorate and pay a tribute to the history of our past. But we must always remember that history can repeat itself. We are seeing a resurgence of anti-Semitism, hatred, name-calling, intimidation, threats, violence, persecution being perpetrated by those who still believe in those stereotypes and conspiracy theories whose seeds were planted so many years ago and whose roots are so deeply embedded and woven into the fabric of the dark sector of our society today. Educating about the Holocaust and its invaluable lessons that can be learned are more important than ever to help combat today's insidious resurgence of anti-Semitism. Through Holocaust education, we can make a difference and foster hope to prevent a state-sponsored wholesale genocide of the Jewish people from ever happening again. We must teach our champions of the future, our children, to stand up, to resist, reject, and refute all forms of hatred. And we must stand together in solidarity to hope for peace for all.
Today, this is truer than ever. We all know about the acts of hatred and violence perpetrated in the last few years, some right here in Sarasota. We must be upstanders, not bystanders, when these heinous events occur. By standing up for what is right, we can make a difference. The rise of anti-Jew hate is not just a problem for Jews to solve. It is the harbinger of a cancer in our society that is fostering the spread of hatred against many groups of others. It's up to us to do anything, all that we can do, and do something now. Before we all rise to visit the scrolls on the far wall of the ballroom, please join us in unison as we recite together the Hands Against Hate pledge. And as we endeavor to help make ours an inclusive and peaceful community filled with love. And don't forget, after visiting the scrolls and learning more about them by representatives of each organization, please join us for refreshments and conversation in the lobby while you visit the incredible artwork displayed in the gallery that was created by local students at the Community Day School, the Jewish Congregation of Venice, Temple Emmanuel, and Temple Sinai. And the pledge. I pledge to stand up and resist hate, bigotry, and bullying. I will not stay silent in the face of intolerance. I will work with my neighbors to create kinder, safer, and more inclusive communities for all. Thank you so much for joining us, and shalom to all.